Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
And this is Jack from Emails That Sell.
Today, we are going to look at another weapon of influence called authority.
You're going to hear the theory behind authority and how authority can impact your cold email campaign. Next, you'll learn why telling people you're an expert is a bad idea and what you should do instead. And finally, you'll see a few ways that you can bake authority into your cold emails so that you can become more credible and trustworthy to your audience. According to Robert Cialdini and his book Influence, we feel a sense of duty or obligation to people in positions of authority. So, if you can put yourself in a position of authority, naturally you will have people a little bit more ready to listen to what you have to say and believe it when you do.
So the big question from our audience then would be, does that work? Let's go straight to the point.
It does work. Turning on the TV or flipping through a magazine or visiting websites today, you're going to see that this weapon of influence is still very much in use today. For example, people who have spoken at events will prominently display that on their website in order to put themselves in a position of authority. It's also a side benefit of having a blog or a podcast or a Facebook group that's starting to get traction so that people recognize that they are an expert in their field, therefore they are an authority and should be listened to and believed a little bit more quickly than somebody who has less authority.
Okay, brilliant. Now, how do I use that for a cold email?
It's a little bit tricky, and in my opinion, I think it's harder to use authority than most other weapons of influence, only because it can be used incorrectly. If you try and push authority into your cold email copy, oftentimes it'll come across as braggy and will turn people off as opposed to getting them to view you as a little bit more trustworthy. So approach authority with caution. That said, there are a few things that you can do to stack the deck in your favor so that you're positioned with a little bit more authority than if you wouldn't have done so, let's say, consciously. So for example, the photo that you're using in your email signature matters. Even if it's just a G Suite image that comes up when people open your email in Gmail, that image, if it's grainy and it shows you in a t-shirt, according to research, according to Robert Cialdini, maybe you'd be better off using an image that is clear, crisp, and maybe you're wearing nice clothing, and even better, maybe you're at the podium giving a keynote speech in order to bake in some authority before somebody even reads your email. If you're skeptical, maybe you're thinking, okay, well, just because I've got a photo of me giving a keynote speech, would that really make somebody listen to me a little bit more than if I didn't show that picture first? Well, surprising research says that not only will people find you more credible, but studies even show that people that are wearing clothes like an authority figure, so maybe it's a business suit or a white lab coat, people view them as even taller, more attractive, and more trustworthy. So again, you're tapping into a deeper motivation that I think almost every human being feels, where this sense of duty or obligation to people in authority. I'll take a quick quote from Cialdini's book. He says, we're trained from birth to believe that obedience to proper authority is right and disobedience is wrong. So just as people trust the word of their doctor or dentist, they'll generally accept the authority of any official-looking person who endorses an advertised product.
Okay, well, let's talk about baking that into an email. What else can we do?
Just keep in mind that when it comes down to write your emails and you want to include some authority in that copy that you're putting together, just remember, you're not making anything up. You're not trying to say, how do I sound intelligent, or how do I just flat out tell people I'm an expert? Instead, take a look at what you've done in the past, what you've accomplished, some of the credentials you've earned, and think about how many of those you can include into an email series. So for example, if TechCrunch featured your company in one of their latest articles, then in a PS of your cold email, you can link to it It might look like, oh, and by the way, to learn a little bit more about what I've just described, feel free to take a look at the article TechCrunch wrote about us. So the idea here is you're not boasting. Instead, you're mentioning it almost as if it's in passing so that it doesn't appear like you're pushing it too much. Instead, it's just, oh, by the way, we happen to have been featured by TechCrunch. Read about it here. That's going to come off a little bit more inviting and at the same time show that your company has a little bit more authority behind it.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of reverse engineering when it comes to thinking. So instead of saying like you're an expert in that topic and so on, you can list that some of your books or some of your talk that you've done on that particular topic, which make people think of, oh, he must be an expert in that topic. That's basically this thing. But if you say, I'm an expert in that topic, no one will believe you. That's the point. And on top of that, you have to think that, we're still talking about cold email. So a cold email is by default a bit suspicious. Why am I receiving an email? So, we're kind of used to be aware of scam, be aware of phishing attacks and things like that. So we always take things with a grain of salt when it comes from a stranger. So if you manage to link an external authority that then has authority in the eyes of the reader, then you gain that authority by default.
It's best to view authority as something that you can add into an email in order to enhance it, as opposed to design an entire email around it. So for example, maybe you have a recruiting email that's going out. Instead of just saying, would you like to apply to my company? It wouldn't be better if you said, my company is the best company to work for. But if you said, we just won, an award from Glassdoor for being one of the top companies to work with, then that's just a snippet that you've just added to that message that has added authority so that people will give your company a little bit more weight, a little bit more time and consideration than if you hadn't done so.
Authority usually takes time to be developed in a cold email. When you're in a real situation, you can see that person straight away. You see the environment, you see everything, and then you make an informed decision based on that. But with cold email, every cold email is received the same, unless you obviously play with font and stuff like that, but it plays against you. But what I mean is you receive an email, and I need to read it in order to figure out your authority. You could use some of those icons or some of those pictures eventually at the end, but still, someone will then come to your email and then have to read through in order to fall on those authority cues that you put in your cold email. So that's a bit harder.
Whoever is writing these cold emails, best case scenario is they actually are an authority figure in their field. And I think the problem here is that many people who are not actually experts or authority figures in an industry will sit down and try and write an email that will make them appear to be so. It's hard to do that. If instead your name is well known in the software development space, just having your name attached to that email technically will be an authority enhancing line. So the idea is it can't really be fabricated. Instead, what you want to do is just leverage every single award, credential, startup incubator, or book that you've been a part of in order to make people understand that you're somebody worth listening to and trusting. Authority is not the content of an entire email campaign. Instead, it's something to be kept on the top of your mind when you're writing, so that if you have something that will back up who you are, your message, the company you work for, then go ahead and do so, because you can build your authority and therefore your credibility and all that stuff behind it.
You know what's interesting, Jack? I've been looking at some of the top performing campaigns in QuickMail, and pretty much none of them use authority whatsoever.
Really? Nobody's referring to any article, any publication?
Nope. I'm talking like 70% plus reply rate, right? So it doesn't mean that not adding them doesn't actually give you an edge, but it is that it's not necessary as an influence factor per se. Oh, just being curious as well, have you tried different pictures yourself?
Yeah, I have, and actually I started getting more connections when I updated my picture from shot that I took with my iPhone in my backyard to actually had a professional photo taken, had my hair done, and it actually made a bit of a difference.
Or you could just buy a lab coat and then and then we'll check.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds ridiculous. Why would I listen to somebody who puts on a lab coat? Like, for example, Drew Eric Whitman, he wrote a book called Cashvertising, and he's a marketing speaker, copywriter. And when he gives keynote speeches, he puts on a lab coat. Everybody in the audience knows he's not a doctor, yet he still does it every speech he gives so that people will listen to him a little bit more. The fact that he still wears it for his speeches tells me that it must be working, even though rationally it makes no sense.
I do think it makes sense. I honestly do, because we are very quick to judge people based on their appearance, right? So you're more likely to give your money to someone that looks like, having a suit and looks successful than someone that looks like, just being a homeless person. That kind of makes sense.
If you're talking about a financial advisor, yeah, wear a nice business suit. But a marketer wearing a lab coat, to me, it shouldn't compute, but it does, and that's what I don't get.
All right, so in this cast, we learned that authority can help shaping the opinion your recipient makes of you, and it starts with even a small picture on your profile. Next, we've seen how important it is not to brag about things, but instead hit your prospect with subtle clues that will make him think that you're an expert. And finally, as you probably guessed, authority is not a preferred weapon of influence, and it's a bit tricky to use with cold email, since it's all about starting a conversation where authority is more used to close deals. That said, if you founded a well-known company, it's easy to benefit from authority in your opening sentence by writing something like, "Hey X, I'm Bill, the founder of Microsoft." That's it for today. Enjoy and see you next week.
Hey, cold emailer.
Yeah, you.
If you got some value from this episode, give us a high vibe by sharing a 2-sentence review on iTunes.
Or Stitcher or TuneIn. That works too.
It's a quick way to help other growth-minded folks like us find this podcast.
So they can send awesome emails.
And make everyone's inbox a better place. Thanks.